Alright, now for the breakdown of the match between Jacob and myself. I think that this is a uh, good game to illustrate the concept of triggering an endgame and the importance of hazards as well, which of course, I feel like I'm talking about the importance of hazards in every single game, but like seriously, the hazard, like the hazard sub game is so incredibly important. I can't even describe how important it is. It's just ridiculous. I think that Jacob, you do a decent job of positioning here early on. But of course, allowing rocks and not having any way to remove them is an issue. Like that's just a pretty big permanent disadvantage for you. Now, Altaria comes in at 75. Gliscor takes 12% every time it switches in, which is admittedly Gliscor doesn't care that much. Landorus takes 12%. Of course, Volcarona will take half its health upon entry, so it can't even switch in twice. Or I guess it can theoretically, but anyway. I do get a little lucky here. Get this Hurricane crit, which bails me out of what is a bit of a problem. And then you get your surprise kill with Landorus, but then because you reveal that it's Scarf, all of a sudden I can force you out by going to Excadrill. Keldeo is Amogus is really annoying for Keldeo. Definitely something that you should be planning for. Next time you go to a battle, how can I break down Keldeo so that, how do I break down Amogus so that Keldeo can sweep? We're just playing like sort of a long balance game here. And now I know that I get 2 free turns with Latias. And this is what I want to talk about, is I've triggered an end game here. The game is basically over. This Latias is going to do so much damage to your team that from here on out, I can just even if it doesn't straight up sweep, it's just going to accomplish so much that I can just trade down and win. This is how you should be approaching the game with your team as well. You should be trying to find the points where Volcarona and Altaria trigger an endgame and win. So I know I get at least basically 2 free turns because you have to switch, and you also don't have a great resist here. I think probably would have been better to go straight to Altaria. Actually, that probably would have kept the game going a little more. I guess I didn't consider that. But anyway, like I said, Latias is just going to kill everything from this point. It outspeeds everything except for Scarf. Lando. And it is just gonna, it does end up just killing everything here. As we one-shot Volcarona with +2 Psyshock, and Lando dies from Rock Chip. So I think that this is very illustrative. I know with my team that if I get 2 calm minds up and I have rocks up, I've essentially won the game. And you gave me that position, right? Because now I know, I mean, that, I know I can deal with Lando, Volcarona, Keldeo, and Gliscor. And then if Altaria hasn't entered yet, and Megad before rocks got up, so if it's guaranteed taking 25% when it enters, I know that a +2 Psyshock will KO. I know that a +2 Surf will KO from 60%. So essentially I know, like I said, that I've won the game. Right? Could have put up a little more fight by bringing in Altaria. Still wouldn't necessarily been a great position for you, but you have to find what these conditions are for your sweepers as well, Jacob. And the thing about your team is that it has 3 of these offensive threats, right? In Keldeo, Altaria, and Volcarona, that all sort of work together to accomplish the goal of breaking down your opponent's checks. One Landorus that I think that you should strongly consider, if we go to X and Y, there is this offensive set, which runs Sword Stance, a Rock move, and Stealth Rock. This is beautiful for your team. You know, you lead as Landorus. You get rocks up, and then you set up a Sword Stance, and like you're just a nightmare for everything. So, would recommend giving this set a try in future games. I think it works a little bit better. The goal of your team is not necessarily to be defensively solid, right? The goal of your team is to break down your opponent's defensive core enough to the point where one of Keldeo, Keldeo, Altaria, and Volcarona win the game when they press their setup move. It's kind of a scary way to play. I can understand wanting to play a more balanced defensive game plan, but trust me, it's going to work really well. I also think that you can do a similar thing that I just described Lander is doing with Gliscor. I think that that's completely reasonable. Actually, I think that, you know, maybe even Gliscor is slightly better into my team because it has superior longevity. And I sort of have like this, this really solid balance core with these 3 months. Volcanion, Tornadus, and Amoonguss. So having a little bit of longevity is appreciated. Getting multiple chances at the apple is potentially more impactful than just having one really threatening setup. But yeah, I think that another thing that was sort of a fundamental mistake in this game is just the number of switches that you did. Just too many. Like I said, like we want to be dealing damage or setting up generally with your team. Because like eventually it's like I said, like my defensive core is just going to break down. But we are 1, 2, Yeah, we're basically switching on every turn here, right? It's a lot of switches. I guess you only end up switching 6 total times, but a lot of those times do happen in these opening turns. Oh, no, we need the full. You switch 10 times, which your team doesn't necessarily have the support to be able to do. Like, you don't necessarily benefit that much from switching. It's actually just a tempo loss, generally. You know, where time is very important for your team. Like, you know, I've been talking about a lot, like, finding those free turns. When I switch, that's giving you a free turn, right? Now, my team has a little bit of, has a way to offset the tempo loss of switching, because I can heal Amoonguss and Tornadus. But this is kind of a place where my team is unique, right? No one else really has a regenerator core like this. But your team isn't defensively solid enough to support using a third of the turns in this game on switches, right? You also do have a way to offset tempo loss of Lando switching out, and also Magnezone. That is true and important to note. But yeah, I guess these are sort of the fundamental strategic errors. I know you mentioned that you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to play this hyper offense style. Man, hyper offense is fun. Hyper offense rocks. You know, you're not gonna get these 5-1, 5-0, 6-0 victories with hyper offense, but like that doesn't matter. You know, what matters is that you get the win at all. Now, occasionally you'll get a 6-0 victory, like you did in Week 1 if you get really lucky. But you have to sort of embrace the offense with your team. You have Volcarona, you have Altaria, you have Keldeo. These guys all push you in the direction of embracing an offensive identity. Now I will say that Keldeo is very flexible. Keldeo can go in hyper offense and it can go anywhere. But Volcarona and Altaria definitely do push you towards strategic extremes. Where Altaria really only wants to be in a hyper offense context or a stall context. So yeah, I just think that these are important things to keep in mind. I think that your team is still very strong. Of course, you run into some tough matches. But yeah, just keep your head up and try to take what I say to heart. And yeah, I think that you'll find that your team is extremely threatening. And poses a lot of problems for everyone, myself included. So, yeah, that's the takeaway on this game. Find the conditions that trigger an ending where you win with your sweeper, and then try to achieve those conditions in the game. Switching is good, but time is very important still, and not every team can afford to switch a lot. In fact, I would say most of the teams can't afford to switch a lot. They just want to hunker down and attack. Now, of course, there's exceptions to this, but I digress. And embrace, this one's specific to Jacob, but actually also it's true of several teams. Embrace an offensive identity. Accept that in almost every matchup, Jacob, you will be the beatdown. To borrow a parlance from Magic, you are the one who is forcing the issue, forcing your opponent to switch, and then taking advantage of those switches by setting up. And then using that setup to break down your opponent's team. Yeah. As opposed to my team, which is more about positioning, long-term planning, finding the right spot, slowly chipping away, and achieving the conditions for Latias to sweep. Your philosophy is more like, I'm just going to throw a bunch of really difficult problems at you and bet that you do not solve all of them before you run out of Pokemon. And that's a really fun way to play. Anyway, that's my coverage of Jacob versus myself. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that this one was informative. I hope you guys have a good day.